A very good evening to all of you. I welcome you all to the ICAN initiative, the Hindu and Indian Express analysis. I want to tell you that in today's newspaper, Hindu and Indian Express, there wasn't much news. So I'm trying to cover whatever was relevant for the exam. So we'll start today with the story of the day. So as you all know that today is Buddha Purnima. So I have selected one story about Buddha. So once Buddha was asked, what have you gained from meditation? For which he replied, I have not gained anything. There is nothing that I have gained from meditation. But Buddha told that because of meditation, he has lost so many things. He has lost anger, anxiety, depression, insecurity, fear of the old, and the death. So all of these Buddha had lost because of meditation. Now, why this story is important? These days, UPSC has the tendency of asking several philosophical essays. For instance, consider that there is a philosophical topic in your essay paper similar to something like there is no gain without pain and there is no rainbow without rain or something like that. So in which case the whole essay will be on it will be revolving around the fact that if you want some gains in your life, you will have to take pain. But always the beauty of the essay is that you can give fresh perspectives to it which nobody else can think about. Now, most of the children would have written only around the topic that for gain there will be pain. So that is what they would have written. But if you give a fresh perspective that sometimes even for loss you have to undergo pain, and that loss is also a good thing. So many times you don't even look for gaining something, you are rather ready to undergo pain in order to lose something. So that is a very fresh, original perspective that you can give to such essays. And this will be highly appreciated in the exam because easily your essay will stand out of the rest. And also we must realize that there is no one universal way of writing the essay. So those of you who have written mains, you must have realized that once you come out of the exam hall after your essay paper, and if you compare your essay with that of your friend, and both of you have written on the same topic, yet both of you would have written completely different things in the paper, and that's precisely the beauty of the essay. So you can make it as fresh and as original as it can be with the help of your own original ideas. So when there is a topic like there is no gain without pain, you can have a new dimension that we don't even need to gain something every time. We are happy to lose few things also, and we are ready to undergo pain to lose also. So that is a very fresh perspective we can give to the essays. And always, whenever you see the topic, always try to think of this perspective to give in the essay. That will be highly valued in the exam. So with this, we will start with the first topic, which is the individual liberty versus public interest. So these days there is this talk about the individual liberty, that is a right to freedom, right to privacy, etc., and then the public interest being the right to health of the public health and all that. So in this context, whether personal liberty is important or public interest is important, or if we need a balance between the two, where do we draw the line? So this is what we'll be discussing. So when this is a topic, it is also possible that this topic you can get it in the form of an essay. So in that case, you can give a very good introduction, which I found in the newspaper today. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev, who was the leader of the USSR, he started an anti-alcohol campaign. Why? Because there was excessive drinking in USSR, and it was found that because of excessive drinking, there were more rapes, there were more robberies. So therefore, keeping the public health in mind, the anti-alcohol campaign was initiated. So it did give very good results in terms of the crime rate it came down, and life expectancy also rose. But however, this campaign proved to be a political and economic disaster, precisely because this campaign was curbing the right of the people to make a choice whether to drink or not. So it was curtailing the freedom of people. So there is an old Soviet joke which says that a dissatisfied and an angry citizen, fed up of standing in lines for vodka, decided to go assassinate Gorbachev. But he soon came back and reported that the lines to assassinate Gorbachev were even longer than the lines for vodka. So it means that if there is a government which is restricting the freedom of the people, it might go against it. So then in that case, where do we draw the line? between individual liberty and public interest. So this is what we'll be seeing. Now, the most important paradox of liberalism is that where do we draw the line between freedom that is given to the people and between the public interest? So whenever anybody says that liberalism is a way to go about, it is very important for people to have freedom. But at the same time, in societies where people are mature and they can exercise self-restraint and they know where to draw the lines, that is where liberalism is the most successful. For instance, if you are given the freedom to express, but this freedom of expression, though is very important, it becomes meaningless if you are misusing this freedom of expression to spread hatred in the society. Similarly, we say that sexuality, intimacy is the private issues of an individual and everybody has a right to privacy. So therefore, the state should not interfere in matters of sexuality or intimacy. But if these expressions of sexuality become, it is seen that it is degrading, it is becoming violent, there is misogyny being spread in the society, there's so much of hatred between the genders, then we need to draw the line and there is a point where the state has to interfere. Similarly, you talk about the right of the people to drink. So the state should not interfere with the people's right to drink, but drinking excessively can cause many social harms as well. So WHO has says that 5.3% of the deaths worldwide are linked to alcohol in the age group of 20 to 39, and this figure will rise. And in this particular age group of 20 to 39, this figure rises to 13%. So 13% of the deaths worldwide in the age group of 20 to 39 are linked to alcohol. Similarly, there are several evidences on how alcohol addiction can impair the relationships, and the sexual intimate partner violence can happen because of alcoholism. For that also there is enough evidence. So therefore, one thing is clear, that the right to drink and allowing the freedom to make that choice to drink or not cannot be absolute. So then what should we do? Should we completely prohibit the freedom of people? No, definitely not. But we must definitely draw some lines. Now, what do we do in that case? For instance, if we take the example of alcohol, the answer is not in prohibiting drinking by the people, but then we have to take some policy measures so as to reduce the harm that alcoholism can cause. For example, people must be educated on intelligent drinking. People do not know how much to drink, they overdrink, and that actually causes harm. But if people are educated on intelligent drinking, to take small doses and not too frequently, so it doesn't cause any harm health-wise to the person. So we must educate people on intelligent drinking. Also, community intervention is very important, and we can also regulate the density of alcohol shops. And we must start social conversation about alcoholism as a problem. What should we do? So that conversation among the public must start. For that, there requires a realization that yes, it is causing some social harms. So this is what is very important, and this is where liberalism also succeeds, because liberalism is not just giving people absolute freedom, but also ensuring that this freedom is exercised in the most judicious and the right proportion. So in this context, John Stuart Mill had remarked on liberty that it is important to protect the individual autonomy and the individual liberty. But however, state will have to intervene if that liberty is causing harm to others, if that liberty is actually being used against the vulnerable people. State needs to intervene to educate the people how to use their liberty, and to provide public services also. Sometimes the state will have to intervene between our liberty. So in GS1 paper, you have a topic called as the political philosophies like globalism, liberalism, and all that. So this liberalism is a very important topic, and you must thoroughly prepare on it. So there are various types of liberalism, like classical liberalism, neoliberalism, and all that. So this is a pictographical representation. If you get a question in the exam, like discuss what is liberalism and what are its types, or what is the difference between liberalism and neoliberalism, how relevant is it in today's context or anything. So you can use these pictographical representation. For instance, this shows the representation for classical liberalism. Classical liberalism says that individual freedom is the ultimate and government can not interfere at all. So this shows that in this seesaw, the individual freedom has the highest place and government authority is the lowest. So government cannot interfere in between the individual freedom. So people enjoy a great deal of freedom and the government is also relatively weak. Similarly, you can draw the diagrams for neoliberalism, which attempts to strike a balance between the individual freedom and government authority. So this type of pictographical representation will give an edge to you in the exam. So now we will see the difference between classical liberalism and modern or neoliberalism. In the classical liberalism, it was a pure form of liberalism, which said that every individual has the right to own a private property and government has absolutely no business in the economy. There is full freedom to be granted, and the classical liberalism basically was an offshoot of the ideas that aroused during the French revolutions. That is, it was based on the ideas of liberty, equality and fraternity. And it was also accepted, it accepted the economic ideas of Adam Smith, that means laissez-faire. So the capitalism should be completely free and a free market approach should be there in the economy. So this is what classical liberalism says. Now coming to neoliberalism. So in this, it is a modified version of the classical liberalism, or we can say that neoliberalism is nothing but classical liberalism which has evolved over a period of time. So in this, it says that there has to be greater amount of freedom for the greatest number of people. That is, it is basically a utilitarian approach. So it says that people should enjoy freedom, but however, government should involve directly more with the people so as to protect the needy and the vulnerable. So my individual freedom should not come at the expense of your individual freedom. So that is how neoliberalism is. And if my freedom is coming in way of your freedom, then there is a scope for government intervention. So neoliberalism rather says that society can place some reasonable restrictions on the individual freedom in the interest of common good. So this is what, and why neoliberalism came into picture was because the classical liberalism was failing. The classical liberalism and Adam Smith philosophy says that there must be free capitalism, and also the trickle-down theory says that if there is free capitalism and if the rich and the industries evolve, then there will be more wealth, and this will ultimately percolate down to the lower sections of the society, and there will be wealth across the country. But this did not happen because it led to concentration of wealth just at the hands of the capitalists, while the proletariats suffered. So neoliberalism evolved because of criticisms or failure of the trickle-down effect. And so that's it about neoliberalism. So we come to types of liberalism. Classical, I have already explained that it is an offshoot of the ideologies that became popular during the French Revolution of liberty, equality and fraternity. So therefore, it is a staunch supporter of freedom of press, freedom of speech and all that. Then economic liberalization is laissez-faire, wherein there must be complete capitalism and the private sector must have a free hand. There must not be any regulations, no tariffs, no labor rights, nothing. So this is economic liberalism. Then political liberalism is nothing but a utilitarian approach, that is maximum good for the maximum number of people. So the approach should be such that it minimizes the pain and it maximizes the pleasure. So political liberalism talks about the principle of social contract, wherein citizens come together and they form a social contract amongst themselves. They form a law amongst themselves and they decide to abide by it. So thinkers like John Stuart Mill were proponents of the political liberalism. There is also something called as social liberalism, which means that it just focuses more on the social liberties. Then there is libertarianism. Libertarianism means that people should have the right to make choice, whether in economic sphere or in social sphere. So they must have the right to make their own decisions, economic or social, where the government should not interfere or involve itself. That is libertarianism. Progressivism means that society at any point of time has certain flaws, and the society has to progress to remove these flaws and to be a better society tomorrow. So this improvement of the society will happen through political reform, and this political reform can and will happen with the help of the government. So that is what progressivism is. So progressivism just says that the society should progress, and if it requires the involvement of government, it should involve. So next we come to the next topic, which is the privacy concerns. So here the ethical hacker Robert Baptist says that there are security flaws in the Aarogya Setu app, and the hacker has said that 5 people at the PMO and 2 at the army headquarters are unwell. So the hacker was able to see this detailed personal information of who was unwell by changing the latitude and the longitude, the locations in the app. So the hacker was able to see all these. Now we have already discussed multiple times before the privacy issues associated with these digital interventions, whether it is the Aarogya Setu app, which helps in contact tracing and surveillance. So why this I have included specifically today is, now you imagine that an evaluator gets 2 answer copies. In one answer copy, it is written that there are, if the question is about the privacy concerns in the digital era, then one answer copy has something like the Aarogya Setu app had some privacy concerns, and the other copy has something like such and such an ethical hacker pointed out security flaws by saying that people in the PMO and the army headquarters were unwell. And PMO is the nerve center of the government. The army headquarters is, they are all very important places, and if people are unwell there and that is revealed, then that can cause a lot of panic in the country. So if one is specifically writing such a thing, then that will definitely add value to the answer. There is one thing where you generally say that it has some privacy concerns, but it is quite another to specifically say that such and such a hacker had pointed out to these vulnerabilities where even people were unwell in PMO and army were revealed. So that is something very severe, and the evaluator will feel so that you know something and you have written some specific information. And definitely the person who has written this specific answer will definitely get at least half mark more in the question. And if you say half mark more in 20 questions, which is 10 marks per paper and 40 marks in 4 papers, so that is what it takes to be a topper in the exam and to be out of the list. So try to include some of the specific things in your exam and quote some specific example rather than just making some vague statements, just hanging statements that okay, this had a privacy concern, that's it. So try to include at least 2-3 such specific things in your answers so that it helps your answers to stand out of the rest. So now we will discuss yesterday's question. So the question I had asked was, can online education replace the current system of education? Analyze the merits and demerits of online education. So first of all, definitely we can't agree that online education will replace the current system of education. So the way to go about in your answer is to form a conclusion wherein you say that it is a good combination of both that is going to be prevalent, and that is also what is best. It is a combination of 2 T's, which is teacher and technology. So that is what will be the future. And then when it comes to, and also if you in fact the 2018-19 economic survey, it states the category wise consumption of mobile content, so in which the education occupies just 1.7% of the mobile content, so which shows how much poor and at what level the online education content in India is. So all these reasons show that it cannot be possible that the online education can replace the current system of education. So now we come to the merits of online education. So in the merits, first we can say that there will be flexibility to choose the time. Now I can make this video at the time that is flexible to me, and you can watch the video at the time that is flexible to you. So this flexibility is not there in an offline class where you have to go to the class and sit there. So this offers flexibility. Second, it offers a scalability. This what we saw yesterday when we read about the views of Nobel laureate Abhijit Banerjee. He says that online education is scalable. So someone can just sit in India and access lectures of MIT. So this scalability is of course not possible in the offline education. Third, some of you might find it very intriguing, but online education is also considered to help and encourage more interaction. How is that possible? Why? Because when you go to school, some of the children may be very shy, so they may not even participate, ask doubts and all that. But in an online mechanism, the students don't hesitate much, and those who are shy also, they come forward and participate in chats because it offers a little amount of anonymity and nobody knows who you are, and nobody you don't fear that people will judge you the way you talk or the way you ask. Okay, so that's why it might promote interaction of these shy elements also. Then you can talk about the convenience. So convenience means that you can study at the time that is convenient to you and the manner that is convenient to you. Many times it so happens that there are some learners who experience a lot of performance pressure when they are actually attending a course with the other people. But if you are doing this online, this kind of performance pressure and this kind of stress will be less. You don't feel that stress, and this also diminishes the distraction of other learners. So you won't be disturbed and you can learn at your own pace at your own time. And then the next advantage is also that the costs are lower, because no money is spent on classrooms, on training facilities, and it requires fewer instructors and fewer books. So therefore the costs involved are also less. And another most important merit is that it can be customized. So it can be easily tailor-made and participants can learn at their own pace. So there will be people who are fast learners and slow learners. So it is possible to pace these online education modules according to the pace of learning of the participant. So which is not possible in an offline mechanism, where you in a particular class you have both the fast learners and the slow learners, in which case the teacher will have to choose the medium pace. And also you can say that there is more diversity, because if it is an online class, you have people from several countries and several backgrounds also who are attending the course and learning with you. So there is more diversity, there is more exchange of richer experience and knowledge, and this gives rise to better creative thinking also. So these are some of the merits of online education. So we come to demerits. So in demerits, you can first talk about the digital divide, of course, that how it will widen the gap between the haves and the have not. And then it is also impersonal, because children they go to school and they socialize and they understand team building and efforts and all that, but this makes online education makes it very impersonal. And computer screen, again, it's not a good thing for students to watch the computer screen for a long period of time. And also you can see that whenever a person is learning online, if the person is self-disciplined, he will be completing the course. Otherwise, because there is no such compulsion of time or there is no strict timetable, there are few people who subscribe to many online courses, but then they don't do it because they don't have self-discipline. So only those people who have self-discipline will be able to take advantage of this, but the rest won't. It will also lead to loss of many jobs, which can include, for instance, the housekeeping, the security guards, school bus drivers. All of these people may lose jobs also. And then school is a great social leveler, where there are students from the rich background, from the poor background, from various backgrounds. So this helps the students to develop feeling of brotherhood. In spite of diversity, there is unity. They develop respect for the teacher, and they learn respecting the elders. They respect fellow human beings, seniors, they love their juniors, they build relations, there is empathy. So, but online education, the emotional intelligence development is going to be poor. So these values are developed over a long period of school and college education, which will be missed out in an online setting. So that is why these are the demerits, you can say. But then what is going to be forward? This is the statistic that I was referring to. The 2018-19 economic survey says the category-wise consumption of mobile content. So you can say that education is just 1.7%, which is very low. But see, entertainment on the other hand. So it is a long way if we are talking about the online education replacing the offline. So the way forward lies in blended learning. So this is a very good pictographical representation which you can draw in your answers. So there is a brick and mortar classroom, and there is an online learning with the help of computer. So what we are talking about is this zone of overlap, which has features of both a brick and mortar classroom and also an online learning. So this blended environment is what we seek, where the features of both are there, where we are able to allow the students to have impersonal communication and develop and socialize, and develop that emotional intelligence. And at the same time, we should be able to personalize learning and offer them more flexibility and convenience in learning at their own pace. So when we talk of blended learning, it has the components of computer learning, which includes virtual learning platforms, then technology integration, global connections, even game-based learning is very important. At the same time, it has the elements of the traditional classroom learning, like there is peer-to-peer coaching, there is direct instruction. So blended learning is what we must aim in the future. Even if you ask me personally, I like the feel of the pages, I like the smell of the books. So I personally don't want the online education to replace the offline. So it is better that it's in a blended form, so that the advantages of both can be blended together for the best learning experience. So today's question is ethical hacking ethical? It is a 10-marker question for 150 words. And try to at least write down the ethical issues broadly that may be involved. Is it really ethical, or should we change the name of ethical hacking, that hacking can never be ethical? That is also possible. So try to think and broadly write down the issues. And that's it for today. Thank you.